What's up, guys? Tomorrow is the day in which you will take your exam, and remember that is happening 10 a.m. Alaska time. In this video, I kind of want to go over the resources that I have provided for you and how you might use them. Please take a while to look over those and make sure you've located all the necessary equations that you want. So let's dive right into it. I would also like to mention, actually, before we begin, I've decided not to make videos on confidence intervals and hypothesis tests because I've already made them for chapter 10. So I'm it's all basically the same. So if you want to review, I'd say watch those chapter 10 videos that I've posted previously on the website. And I think that going over these resources is also going to kind of jog your memory. So the first one I have is the one that you've had all year. This formula sheet is just fine. It's, I think, kind of older. It's got a bunch of equations. It's all kind of on one sheet, plus a couple more that look, plus some stuff that we didn't learn chi-squared, so you don't worry about that. You can eliminate that. It's got the tables, everything else you might need. The College Board put out one for the 2020 stats test that I think is a little bit better in some ways, but you might want to have both available to you. So I wanted to show you this one as well. I like this sheet a lot. It's got like kind of a bunch of random formulas, as well as it's got the different distributions in a table. So you have your probability distributions, binomial, geometric, and it shows the mean and standard deviation of those distributions. So that's really helpful to have. It's all organized in a table, which I find just unbelievably helpful for me. In this video, I also want to patch up something that I forgot to do the last slide in my bivariate data, and I didn't go over these two equations. So you might want to check the notes on those on how to find the slope and how to use the standard deviation of y and x and the correlation coefficient to find the slope and find your least squares regression line. I really like this one as well. So it's got the binomial geometric. It also has these two equations that kind of show you generally, so like for a hypothesis test, when you're finding the t critical value or a z critical value for proportions, t for means, it shows you how you do that. You're going to do your sample mean minus whatever you're hypothesizing is the population mean divided by the standard error. And it has your confidence intervals, has your statistic, which might be your mean or your proportion, plus or minus a z critical value for proportions, t critical value for means, and then the standard error. Now you can ignore chi-squared. I'm not sure why they put that on here. And then down here it's got the standard errors for the confidence interval, or for each of the different random variables. So like for one single proportion, it's got the standard error there, and for two proportions, and you're taking a difference proportion, it's got the standard error. If you're assuming that two of them are the same, you need to make sure you follow this format where you take and you add up the two observations and kind of do what's called a pooled p hat, and you can find the video for that. I believe it's in 10.3 if you want to refresh doing that. I'd made a whole video on this, and we look at the fatality rates at different countries at the beginning of the coronavirus spread. So that's a video that you can watch if you're interested. Okay, so it's got the difference in proportions, it's got p hat, it's got for a mean, it's got a difference of means, and remember for these you're going to be using a t critical value, and for proportions you'll be able to use a z. And you don't need to worry about this because that's not on the test. You won't be needing it, and you've got your z tables, t tables, so on and so forth. So I really like this equation sheet as an option for you guys for reviewing as well. I'm going to show you the other resources I've got on here. You got a calculator sheet. The calculator sheet has kind of how to get and run through different ways for submitting data or plugging data into a list. I think the thing you're most likely to use is one variable statistics to calculate like the mean or standard deviation or to check your work. The calculator is going to be, if you have a little bit of extra time on the test, going back and verifying your work with a calculator might be a good thing to do. So it's got all these on here if you want to look through. And remember, if you do use your calculator on the exam, make sure you label lower, upper, mean, standard deviation, so on and so forth when you're showing your work. I would, if there's any of these you're worried about, I would go through and practice and give that a shot as you're working through those videos. You also have, remember, you can use your computer. So staplets is an option. I have this. So like if you want to graph bivariate data, you do two quantitative or one variable single group. You can calculate means and standard deviations, and this will do that for you as well. Just a note, when you're using staplets, make sure you enter the data. It's just space separated, so 4, 5, 6.7, 5.4, whatever, right? So you just space separate the data. Commas or spaces. It's not liking that. Oh, it's because it's looking for two. I clicked the two variable. Let's go to one variable. You know, it'll graph it for you. It'll give you the standard deviation, means, everything else. Yeah, cool. So that's also an option. So you get your calculator sheet, which is good. Good resource to have in front of you. I have put together as this, pulling from some other resources as well, and I have all of the acronyms that you learn throughout the year, or at least all the big ones. SOC-V for describing the shape or describing a distribution, not just the shape. I've got DUFs for describing the relationship between two quantitative variables, and BINs and BIFs for identifying binomial and geometric, as well as SPEEDY down here. And it says all of the things. Basically, this is just to jog your memory when you're getting started. So like state, what do you need to do? You need to state your confidence, for a confidence interval, you need to state your confidence level and the parameter. So like we're doing a confidence interval for a difference of two means. What are those means? So say what they represent in context. So it kind of goes through and walks through what you need to do for the SPEEDY process. And then down here, this is really awesome. If it says, please explain or provide an interpretation for these values, R, B, A, which would be the y-intercept, so on and so forth. So you can go through and you can kind of insert context into these formulas to make sure you get good high scoring point values on the exam. Okay. And the last one here I pulled from another AP teacher, which seems pretty helpful. This is kind of useful for when you are doing an inference question. What are the conditions that you have to check? So go through, and so if you're doing a confidence interval for one proportion, it says you need to check to make sure that it came from a random sample. You need to check the 10% rule, you need to check normal, and for one proportion it's n times p hat is greater than 10, and n times 1 minus p hat is greater than 10. Okay, and for two samples it shows you what you need, so on and so forth. Yeah, and then you can run through for means. It also shows you the interpretations on this sheet as well. So there's some double duty on some of the sheets, but I think these are the main hard things to remember, and how to find areas, p-value, or this is how to make a conclusion, so on and so forth. So take a look at these resources before you begin the test. And that's the link to the Zoom, which we're done with. So I think the biggest thing on here for inference, let's go to this one, 2020 sheet. Anytime you're doing a confidence interval, you're going to be using this, right? Which is like, this will be x bar or p hat, or the difference between x bars or difference between p hats. This is going to be, walk through, do a couple practice confidence intervals, do a couple practice hypothesis tests, and you'll be in good shape. Pull some out of your book. Work through some of the ones that I did in the videos, the previous videos, and I think you guys will be doing all right. So let me know if there's any, if you guys have any questions. I'm going to leave my cell phone number in the AP Classroom. You can call me. We can do some studying tonight. If you guys want to work on some problems together, just let me know. Be happy to help you. So thanks for a great year, and I hope the test goes well for you guys tomorrow. We'll see you later. Bye.